Welcome to Inclusive Cyber, your front row seat to understand how a diverse mix of voices is not just necessary, but essential to protect our most sensitive computer networks and personal data. I'm your host, Danny Magallanes, and through my podcast, we shine the spotlight on the heroes and trailblazers from every corner of society who are redefining the diversity, equity, and inclusion frontier. Every episode is a step towards a cyber community that's as varied as it is united, where everyone has the keys to unlock their potential and the power to protect our digital world. Join us on this journey where every listen, every share, every dialogue inches us closer to this new reality. In this episode, I had the amazing honor to have cybersecurity royalty join me on Inclusive Cyber. Mary Galloway is the CEO of Women's Society of Cyberjitsu, or better known as Cyberjitsu. We talk about how she got into the industry, challenges, and how to bring more underrepresented groups, especially women, into cybersecurity. Additionally, we talk about how your network matters, how artificial intelligence can be leveraged in our cybersecurity careers, along with a host of other great topics. Hope you enjoy the show. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Good. Just busy. How's your week been so far?
A little bit busy too. Coming back off of a long week of trips and traveling. I've got 2 more trips this year and just ready to settle down for a little bit and relax.
Yeah, especially with the holidays coming up. So 2 more trips. It's definitely have your plate full. But again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. I know we initially met at Raíces CyberCon, which, wow, I think it's been over a month now.
Yeah, October it was.
Yeah,
Man.
So time flies, right? Funny story, when Raíces was doing the award ceremony, I'm like, who is this lady just winning all these awards? And then I finally found out, oh, that's Mary Galloway. I'm like, oh my God, I need to go talk to her. You're like a celebrity in LinkedIn. So again, it's an honor to have you on the show. And I know we talked a little bit offline, but just completely rebranding the podcast, the overall push to social media to get more visibility on the lack of diversity in cybersecurity. Again, awesome opportunity to chat. If you don't mind going into your background, where are you coming from? Where are you originally from and how you got into IT and security?
Geez, originally from. So that's an interesting question. I was an Air Force brat. So I grew up all over the United States, graduated high school overseas. Great experience. If you can take your kids overseas, by all means, please do it, at least to visit. Such a cool experience, a lot of good memories, and it helps you see diversity in a different way. But I got started as a network engineer for a company called Accenture. So it was before it's Accenture Federal Services, so I'm dating myself a little. Ashburn, and it was one of those roles where I kind of got in because my mom was interviewing, and the lady was like, "Yeah, we're looking for IT folks," and so I was like, "Hey, my daughter just graduated. Can you at least look at her resume?" So that kind of started my journey into tech and at that time, information assurance, more so than like cybersecurity, the buzzword that we hear. I kind of hated that job. And most folks will know I was the only female. I was the only Black woman. I was new. And most of my knowledge was from college and from a lot of Google searching. I don't think it was Google then. I think I was using something else like Dogpile or something.
At Jeeves.
At Jeeves. Yeah. What actually kept me in the space and kept me interested in more of the security side of things was I went to a Security Plus training. One of the teachers from another class, the ethical hacker training, came in and showed us router configurations on the internet in plain text. And I was like, wait a minute, I configure those devices. That shouldn't be out there for people to see on the internet. And so that kind of said to me, like, there seems to be an issue on the security. So I kind of want to go this pen testing route. And that kind of shot me down that path. Lots of government work in between that. So I was a government contractor up until 2014-ish, I guess you could say. Working for various different companies, different government contracting companies in the DC area and in North Carolina. Last place was US CERT aka CISA. And so I was the defensive side at that point, looking at SOC stuff and analyzing log files and using SIM technology before the whole big boom of SIM stuff. Then I finally moved to Las Vegas and went private sector and worked at a casino for a while, and then worked for a big vendor selling SOC automation tools. And now I'm here.
Awesome. So I didn't know this about you, but we share a former previous employer. So I also worked at Accenture.
Oh, really? Nice.
On the federal side, yes. So that's when I left the government, and that was the first job there. So that's awesome. We're Accenture alum, right?
There we go.
You said that you worked at a casino, and the first thing I thought was what just recently happened. So obviously, since you left, that's why they got compromised there. So.
Right. And that's probably true. However, I didn't work for them. I worked for another one, but it's a different type of gig, different type of responsibility. Like what they're trying to protect and why they're trying to protect is very different than what the government's trying to protect, and the kind of data the government's protecting. And it was a good contrast to see that a lot of the processes are the same across. Either way, it takes forever for stuff to happen. Lots of red tape sometimes. Those kind of things. But yeah. So.
No, it's fascinating because a lot of my former colleagues, and including myself, when we transition out of government, it's totally different. We need to have a different mindset because, hey, it's not about pure espionage, threat actors. Now you're looking at cybercrime. And the cool thing is I was doing cybercrime, not doing it, but identifying them when I was in government. But awesome background. So then what are you doing now? What's taking up the majority of your time?
So nonprofit work. I run the Women's Society of Cyberjitsu, a national nonprofit that provides hands-on training to women and girls across the country to get them into cyber and stay in cyber. So we provide the technical training around cybersecurity fundamentals all the way up to reverse malware engineering and everything in between. We also tack on some of those core skills, training, how to interview, what to wear, what not to wear, how to deal with conflict, bias, those kind of things, so that not only do you the technical hard skills, hands on keyboard, but you also have some other things that can round you out as more than just that person. And then outside of that, I also have a small cybersecurity consultancy that I'm putting some efforts into now because I left my previous employer, and at some point income has to come in. So we'll figure it out. But other than that, I'm watching the landscape, seeing what's happening with this AI stuff. And I'm thinking about diving deep into it because there's some benefits here to understanding how AI and cyber work together, and future-proofing my job should I need to get one.
Exactly. And it's interesting that you talked about AI because when you go to conferences now, it's a requirement that somebody's going to be talking about AI. And I know in our prep for the meeting, I didn't mention AI, but when I was reading it, I'm like, oh, I got to ask Mary about AI. So I'm going to shelve that for just a second and just pull just a little bit more detail on your nonprofit. So how long have you been running that for?
The Women's Society of Cyberjitsu, aka WSC, or Cyberjitsu for short, because it is a mouthful. Got started in 2012. Lisa Jiggett's our founder. She's a hacker by trade, a military soccer player, artist, all of the above. And so she was trying to find a community for her to grow and learn and pen testing. Mm-hmm. She found a couple in Northern Virginia, but she didn't really feel super comfortable, or she felt like there weren't enough women or folks that looked like her in those groups. And so she decided to have a workshop. It was Backtrack and something else, and she had a huge group of folks, like 30 or 40 in person, and then probably another 20 to 30 online virtually. And so she knew at that point, like, there was something here. There were women that were interested in learning how to do this stuff and get hands-on and ask the questions, and also pay it forward to teach other folks. And so kind of how I got started. I discovered it because I failed the CISSP. And somebody recommended a study group. And so I went on, I guess at that point it was Google then, but I went on and looked up women in cybersecurity study groups or CISSP or something to that effect. And it popped up and I was like, okay, let me just check it out and see. I was moving back to DC. I said, okay, I need some friends. So here we go. And here we are 11 years later. She was like, hey, do you want to be on the board? And I was like, yeah, sure. but Cyberjitsu has grown into a community for women from all different types of backgrounds, Black, white, Asian, those that are disabled, LGBTQ, all of the different groups of folks that want to be a part of a community that accepts you as who you are and wants to provide you those hard-hitting technical training, technical skills, and help you level up in your career. That's what we like to know.
Yeah, no, I love that background and the overall story and how it came to be. And you're hitting on a lot of key points. That one thing that I've noticed being in cyber, there's lack of women and people of color.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in government, one of my former friends, she leaned over and she said, and I guess I was never really exposed to it or never really looked at it because I grew up in primarily Hispanic from Texas. But I never really paid attention to it when I went to the quote unquote real world. But then she leans over and says, we're the only minorities here. And I'm like, I didn't understand what she was saying. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm not looking at that. But now a little bit different moving forward. And backtracking a little bit of what you said, how you started, that you're Air Force brat and going overseas. I had the opportunity through government to do the same. Yeah. And there were some colleagues that made a comment. They said, you're not the typical person they send over. And I'm like, ooh, tell me more. So I definitely resonate with that. And now that was one of the many reasons I'm starting this video podcast, to bring, and not that you need me to highlight and to push your story out there, but to really understand what you went through and the opportunities to bring in more women, people of color, and then everything in between. LGBTQ, neurodivergent is another title I was ignorant about until the beginning of the year. It's all about creating that safe space for everybody to be their authentic self, but then also contribute to, I don't know if you see it in your perspective, Mary, but there's a lot of challenges here in cybersecurity.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've seen my fair share of them across how many years? 15, 14, 15, something like that at this point. Yeah.
So then why do these problems still exist? I'm just throwing out there based on your experience, based on what you've seen.
There's still a lot of the old, regime in places that kind of continue those stereotypes, those bias down. They teach the kids, they teach the younger generations, and and it may not even be intentional, but it's still a thing. There's still the assumption also that women aren't interested in this industry. They're not interested in gaming or cyber or tech, which couldn't be further from the truth. We can see that there's plenty of women in educational programs for computer science and cybersecurity that are out there. We've got nonprofits like Cyberjitsu, Black Girls Hack, WESIS, sometimes Cybersecurity, that all have a large number of women that are very much interested in this. And then you tack on internationally, they've got nonprofits over there that are training the young women at a young age to say, hey, this is an opportunity for you. And they like it. So that whole adage of women don't want to do this is not necessarily true anymore, but people still believe. I think the other thing is access, right? As women, we tend to be the homemakers, the ones that have to take a step back from work to make sure the house is taken care of because the spouse or whatever is doing the working and whatnot. And so we may not have the resources readily available to us to be able to get into that training. It may be too expensive. It may not be during a time that works or convenient, because I have a family or because I'm working 2 or 3 jobs to make this happen. And so the opportunity for those women to be able to at least take training that's virtual, that's low cost, that's free, get in some of these training programs. Some organizations even provide, I think, like resources for babysitting and things like that, while the parents are going and studying and taking the tests and exams to get a new job. I see those things as challenges, but I feel like we can overcome those things, right? If people start to change their mindset and understand that diversity isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's okay.
I definitely do want to go off on a tangent and, talking about banning books and all the craziness out there. But no, you highlight a lot of great points that there are new opportunities for women. And I know it's hard because society has that old school mentality of, leave it to Beaver, right?
Right.
The male would go out to work, the woman would stay home, take care of the kids, the home. It's still challenging. I know growing up in a Hispanic Latino culture, that's how it was. Seeing my mom just doing that. And then also coming into this country where she didn't speak the language, that was another barrier.
Right.
There are a lot of good efforts along with your nonprofit of Cyber Jitsu. But then now I would argue that we have a cadre of awesome women ready and willing. And I don't want to use a fighting military sense. They're ready to protect our most sensitive data and networks, but they're just waiting.
They're just waiting.
Because there's 3.5 million global, the skills gap, the cybersecurity skills gap. So then what is the discrepancy there? So we have people willing and ready to have the skill sets from your organization and many others like yours, but they're still not allowed entry.
It's kind of a twofold thing. And I tell folks this because I know there's women that I've talked to, they've applied for like hundreds of jobs and they haven't gotten anything back. And so you start to think about, okay, maybe it's the approach. A lot of jobs, you have to know somebody someplace to get in, right? There are some that you don't, but a lot of them you do. I got my job at the casino because I knew somebody that could put me in front of somebody to give me an interview. Same thing at my last job. I said, hey, what is this job requiring? Are you hiring? And that's how that happened. Your network is just as important as applying for jobs. And I think a lot of women miss that part of it. Like, hey, I put all these things out there. I have all these certifications. I have all this stuff. But you're not networking with anybody. So nobody knows your skill set. Right? Yeah, we got the job descriptions, cool, whatever. We all know that they're trash. They've said it for years and they're trying to fix. No need to harp on job descriptions that say this is an entry-level role with 0 years of experience, but you need a CISSP. We know that that's still, it doesn't necessarily mean don't apply for it, right? Even still, even if you don't have the CISSP, apply anyway and actually see what they're looking for. Because it may turn out they might be looking for something they don't even know. And you have those skills and you can say, well, I don't match this. I do map to this other role here, or based on what you're talking about, maybe these other things. But you got to know you got to talk to people. And people are afraid to talk to people.
Yeah. My former boss, he was shocked that I told him that I was an introvert. He said, what? You're an introvert? I'm like, I really am. You put me in an environment where we're talking about cybersecurity. I'm talking up a storm. But you put me in a party where I don't know anyone, I'm just going to be in the corner. Just a couple of points that you highlighted in regards to the job descriptions. And I think there's a study by Harvard that the way women look at these job descriptions, it's like a checklist.
Yeah.
And if that checklist is not 100%, I'm not applying.
Yep.
But then males, I meet 20% of that, I'm still going to apply. So then my kind of perspective is there's a lot of mediocrity that is currently in place in cybersecurity. And that's the job description, just like you mentioned, are another barrier to entry, at least for women.
Oh, there's been plenty of jobs that I haven't applied for because I'm like, I don't meet this 100%. Plenty. Yeah. Then I'm like, wait a minute. But I could have really just did those 3 and been good. And then I would have learned the other 3. Oh, yes, I'm guilty of it too.
But that's not on you, though.
That's on them needing to write that better and understand the actual needs of their company. Yeah.
Yeah, requirements that people in the profession have to fix. And along with HR, having that relationship and collaboration with the hiring manager and said, look, do we need education requirements?
Right.
Do we need, like you said, a CISSP for an entry-level position there? In regards to when you first started out, I know you said that you're the only woman. And were you told, or was the culture around, hey, you need to upskill your technical skills? I'm just curious on your experience to that, because there's a point I want to get to here.
Okay. So it was the first job. So I did have education from my master's and my undergrad degree. However, it wasn't like super technical. I think the most technical course I took was my COBOL training, and that class sucked, but it's probably a very compensatable skill right now.
Right.
Accenture had a training budget, and so you had to use your training money for the year. And so I was like, okay, well, I got to do some sort of training. And I figured, because I wanted to know more and learn more, and I knew that because I was working for the government, I had to have that 8570, some kind of certification. That kind of prompted or request the Security Plus training. At the same time, I was also like, I need to learn more about networking and how networks work. And we have Cisco devices, so let me go and work on understand how these things work and how I'm going to put them together. And I went and looked up what Cisco had for education and training and saw that they had the certifications. I actually wanted the CCNA security first, but you had to take the CCENT or something else before you could take the CCNA security. That actually helped me really understand how the networks work and things like that. But it was one of those things where nobody really said anything. I just knew we had a training budget, and I was like, well, let me utilize this and see what I can. Right. Thank goodness the internet was as good as it was.
Well, I appreciate that background. So then with those new acquired skill sets that you gain from your employer, so obviously you don't have to pay for them. That's another thing when young professionals, college students, or professionals trying to transition, they ask me, which certification should I get? I'm like, none of them. Right? Go to YouTube and search what you want, what you're interested in, and that's free, right? Yep. Because the cyber criminals are going to these courses. What do you need to go through those courses, right?
Yeah, very true.
I'm not anti-certifications. I'm just anti-certifications being used as barriers of entry.
I agree. And it's unfortunate that so I have a lot of certifications, by the way. I've let a lot expire, but it's unfortunate that as minorities, you shouldn't need that certification. You still have to have it because it's like that one extra. If they put you two together, right? Even though this is mediocre Matt right here and you're up here, with your certification, you're still right here.
Yeah, that's so true.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like the chicken and the egg kind of thing. It's a really, do you get it? Let somebody else pay for it for sure. If somebody else is going to pay for it, let them pay for it. Apply to all the scholarships you can to get somebody else to pay for it. LinkedIn Learning is free through your library if you want to do that kind of training and get some skills. Most libraries have it, I think. Lots of free stuff on LinkedIn for that purpose.
Yeah, I've talked to several people of color, women, that it's their qualifications, lawyers, federal agents or former federal agents, CPAs, have all of these qualifications, but it's still, unfortunately, not enough.
Right.
So that obviously is something that we need to continue to fight and push forward and educate. Yeah. It's definitely an uphill battle. In regards to, and then I just wanted to make a comment with, when it comes to certifications, I'm not against the learning. The learning is just amazing, right? And just what you said, I have a lot of certifications that have expired too. I'm like, I have to pay for this? No, sorry. No, I'm not going to do that. So just playing off the technical skills that you learn through certifications and training through your employer, let's put you in a hypothetical situation. You're the hiring manager. Do you focus on those technical skills or the non-technical skills? And maybe, I guess it depends on the role, because there will be roles where, okay, yes, you need to know how to set up a SIM or know how to do pen testing or red teaming correctly.
So I definitely would look at some technical, but I'd look at it of, are you teachable? Are you able to identify situations and problems, navigate through it? And then if you stumble, ask questions. Like, I want to know that part of it, because I can teach you how to be a really good red teamer, as long as I know that you can do the critical thinking and that kind of thing. Or I can teach you how to be a really good vulnerability management person, or I can have you shadow folks for some of those other technical things. But I need to know you're also curious and inquisitive, and you can take a little bit of initiative for some of your learning and what you outside of work. And you got to be able to talk to people. Like, even if it's just the team, you got to be able to communicate something.
Right.
Like, because that's a big part of how how we exchange information. You got to be able to communicate, whether that's through email, on the video, phone, whatever it is, and be able to get your message across, or know who to go to help you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then for people, young professionals listening in, how do they do that though? How do you convey that you're passionate, that you are willing to put in the hard work to learn a new skill set with a specific tool, etc.? Any tips on what they can do, both in the interview and on their resume?
So definitely do projects, like they have open source projects out there. You can go on GitHub and probably find some stuff, but find some things that are interest to you and work on those projects, and then document what you're doing. Either do it video, write a blog or something like that. Today I installed a virtual machine. This is what I did. This is the problems that I had. This is how I solved it. Boom, easy button. And start showcasing those parts of it. Another great way is to engage with folks on LinkedIn. I always recommend folks go and find 3 people that are in roles that are of interest to them, at companies that are of interest to them, and industries that are of interest to them. Connect with them, engage with their content, and that starts to build up visibility for you, and also puts you on their radar. And then you can send them a message and say, hey, I'm interested. Your background looked interesting. Don't be all spammy like the folks come in our inbox. I'll just say, hey, this is who I am. So no, but at least you're putting that out there to say, hey, I'm interested in learning more about you and how we could potentially work together in the space on whatever project but build up the network. And then people will start to see what you're doing and make sure you post what you're doing. So you have to be vocal. Somebody said to me, you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room, but people need to know that you're doing something. Right? Because if they don't know you're doing anything or what you're doing, how are they ever going to know that you're suitable for this role or this promotion or things like that? So you do have to showcase what you're doing a little bit more than a lot of people I think.
I love that recommendation, especially just being more visible, right?
Yeah.
On LinkedIn, which is free. You don't have to buy emails, spam people and stuff like that. And it's a very, at least my experience on LinkedIn, very inclusive, very receptive. Right. And if you do reach out to folks, don't take it personal if you don't get anything back, because everyone is busy, right? I have a lot of messages. I'm like, oh man, this was like 2 months ago. I'm sorry. How can I help you? But yeah, the more you put out there, and eventually karma, manifestation, or whatever you call it, the goodness will go back to you. So actually, let's shift topics. When it comes to AI, I think there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Seeing a lot of blog posts from major kind of websites that talk about cybersecurity and the overall threat landscape, that cyber threat actors are using AI for ransomware. And then when you read the article, there's nothing there, or you go to the source document. How can AI be leveraged both on the red side, the adversaries against our networks, and then on the flip side, how can we use AI to protect us?
That is a fantastic question. And somebody just talked about this over the weekend too. So I'll have to put you in touch with him. He's more of an expert in the space. But yes, I agree that the adversaries are probably using AI to help them create all kinds of content and scripts and code and malware and some other types of craziness that they can execute with the quickness. We can do the same thing if we have the folks that understand how AI and some of those things work together. So you can use, the chat GPTs or whatever other GPTs to create your code to run scripts against systems while you're doing something, like the automated, like vulnerability management tools, like that on steroids. And it's learning as it's going and scanning and those kind of things. So it makes it a little bit faster to scope out your environment and figure out where vulnerabilities may lie. The other side, I think the entire SOC in general can utilize AI. We see it in a lot of the tools that are in the SOC. There are various different levels of machine learning. And as logs and files and information comes into an environment, the system can sort through, kind of navigate that and pull things together and put it in front of an analyst very quickly. It's something that an analyst may take 4 or 5 days to do. Right. So now we're improving the speed and efficiency of how we're analyzing and triaging issues in the SOC, which in turn helps us better protect against those bad guys. And same thing on the flip side, using AI and tools that are AI powered to, image machines after a data breach, or pull systems offline and start the whole investigation process so that the analysts or the forensicators can do other things while that part is running and working. I want to say, and pretty much all of the blue team side of things, AI is great for documentation as well, right? Because it keeps a record of everything. Nobody wants to document anything, so let's use these tools to document our stuff. And AI, this whole world of it is, while it's been around for a while, it's still so new. So there's still so many opportunities and places where people can dig into what it can do and actually help impact and move AI forward in a responsible, ethical way. So I think we're at a good time.
And especially with the newer, younger people or professionals transition into cyber, having that in your resume, that's going to potentially put you at that higher level than, for example, me. I'm slowly trying to learn that as well. But a couple of, I had a lot of questions there as you were talking about how we can leverage AI, both on the defensive side and obviously how the adversaries are using it. But earlier you said that just like government, the private sector is slow moving to incorporate new things. So then are businesses really capable to bring in this brand new technology and use it to defend themselves? And if you're having trouble, what could be some ways to showcase to say, hey, we need to build something, whether internally or even buy it from the vendors?
So honestly, a lot of the vendors have it already, they're building it into their tools. So it's not one of those things where I have to go and learn how to utilize this from that perspective. It's not something separate. They're building it into the tools and programming it for you to understand. And then they give some leeway to do your own kind of programming. So if they're already utilizing the tool, it's really just an enhancement to what they've already been doing. Now, if they haven't been using the tool yet, it's something new, like a new endpoint tool, then obviously they'll have to go through some sort of training. But I foresee a lot of the AI companies getting scooped up in a couple of years by big corporations because they have the next greatest, latest thing. And it's, now we're pushing out robots and whatnot from our computer screens and things like that. But like I said, I think there's definitely a future for how this shapes up and how this looks and how we help companies and organizations utilize the platforms to the best of their abilities, and get the most out of what it is they're trying to use and protect as well.
Yeah. The other question that I had, and a lot of concern that this is creating, that AI is going to replace my job, whatever your job is. So you just mentioned that the SOC analyst, right? And if you're a boss, okay, Tony over here takes 4 days to look at this alert, but your favorite AI application takes an hour. How long does Tony have in that current employment? Or should they be concerned, right?
Based on what I know, it's not going to replace entire teams anytime soon. You still need the human touch, manipulate the information, test the information, train the information correctly to make sure it's pulling what you're looking for. So it's not necessarily going to eliminate those jobs per se. It's just going to force the companies to find other creative ways to utilize those people. So now they can do more complex tasks, right? There's also things like maybe you want to do a double malware analysis on something. I'm totally making that up. I have no clue if that's a thing or not. The system does it first time and then you have your analyst do it a second time. I don't see them losing their jobs. I see their jobs shifting and changing.
Yeah. That makes sense. I don't know about you, but I'm waiting for the Tesla bot to do all the menial work here at the house. As long as it doesn't try to kill me, I think it should be fine. I want to go back to your career. Any challenges that you've experienced, both in and out of work when it comes to IT, or any wins as well? I definitely don't want to just focus on the negatives here.
Lots of wins, right? Even the things kind of
that.
negative, they're kind of wins because it put me in a position where I had to learn something the hard way, which is a good thing.
Right.
It builds resistance and resilience and grit and all that stuff that they say. So there was definitely, I wouldn't be where I'm at in my career without the good and the bad, without the good folks, the bad folks, the folks in the middle, the folks that challenged me constantly. In the course of my career, I've been the only woman. Most of the time, I think US CERT, there was a couple of women, but there was two that were on the technical side of things. So there I wasn't. And then the only Black woman that was technical on teams as well. So that's always a challenge because I always felt like, dang, am I supposed to be here? Dang, do I know this really? Like, oh, okay. So there was a lot of that back and forth with myself. And then I think another challenge that I have is that I'm really big in the community and I really like to do community work. And I feel like all companies should do a lot of community work and giving back and helping. That's a challenge, finding places that are open to that side of me these days. They're out there, probably smaller companies. I've had challenges with people attacking my attire at work. Sometimes I feel like my hair is an issue sometimes. I mean, obviously I'm a bright red is not necessarily a corporate color, but I feel like that's an issue sometimes. And so it's always a challenge of trying to figure out, okay, how can I be my authentic self and still, executive presence or whatever presence I'm trying to present and it not be oh, she's just a slacker or oh, she's just this. And so there's always that challenge or, the angry Black woman or those kind of things. You learn to tread lightly. You learn to pick your battles.
And it's just all that, just put it bluntly, all that BS that you have to deal with. One, being a woman and also being a woman of color. It's just, I'm hopeful that things are getting better in this space. We're still not where we need to be, right? And I think it's just a generational thing. Our kids, and just a quick story, during COVID, a lot of just bad things happened, right? A lot of people were affected. But I was super fortunate with my family in our neighborhood. We did a school pod and with all the kids. So it was just, we're working crazy hours and then having kids at home trying to online teaching. What I got out of that, there were Black kids, there were Hispanic kids, there were white kids, there were Jewish kids, there were non-denomination Christian kids, there were non-binary kids. And they all gelled and became super friends. And one of them in the middle changed their names. I called them by their former name and all the kids yelled at me. That's not their name anymore. I'm like, whoa. Sorry. I'm like, sorry, I'm old.
I didn't know, my bad.
Right. But that gave me hope that the younger generation, they're not going to care about what color your hair is. Anyways, that's super hopeful on my end. Just to wrap this up, what books are you reading or have read recently that kind of resonated with you? And it doesn't have to be cyber, preferably not cyber. I try to avoid that. I'm reading, if you have cyber, that's fine. I'm actually reading, it's funny when I tell people I'm reading this, like, what? New Mexico Ghost Stories Volume 2. Yes, there's 2 books on that. Totally different then.
I don't know. See, I can't, so I'm not a fan of like scary stuff at night, so I don't think I could read that. But actually I have 2. So the first one is called Minda Hart's Right Within. Very good book about workplace trauma. She talks about her experiences in corporate America and how she navigated that space. So that's a really good book. And then, of course, shameless plug, the Black Women in Cyber Collective book. Pre-order is available. This is a book with 50 Black women in cybersecurity and privacy. We all wrote a chapter in this. Camille Stewart wrote the foreword to the book. We managed to get 15 Black women together for a photo shoot and to come to write this. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble for pre-order. The full launch is January 8th.
January 8th. I am going to place my order and share that with my local audience and students out here. So I appreciate that.
It's definitely a good book.
Yeah. No, definitely. How can people get a hold of you? Do you have a website, LinkedIn, email? I know with LinkedIn, you said, hey, don't be pushy and don't start asking for things.
So yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. My page is the Mary Galloway, Mari. Also, if you want to look at Women's Society of Cyber Jiu-Jitsu, that's jutsu.org. You can check us out there, get on our mailing list, join as a member, take advantage of all of the great training. And then my website is not ready yet, but it will be soon, themarygalloway.com. You can catch me there, and let's chat.
Yeah, can't wait to do that. So again, Mary, I appreciate your time. This has been an awesome conversation. I think we could do this for another couple of hours here, but I want to be respectful of your time. We're going to be relaunching next year. You're going to be one of the first episodes and hopefully get you back on the show. We're going to be doing a lot of new things and even in person if possible. So
yes.
That's definitely later down the line. Thank you for your time. It's been an awesome chat and look forward to seeing all the great things that you're going to be doing.
Thank you. It was great to be here.